everyone. I'm delighted to have you with us today. We have many friends and colleagues on the line, and we are excited to share this brand new presentation called B2B CMO Megatrends, Marketing in the Era of the Empowered Buyer. And some of you might be wondering, well, what does Jurassic Park have to do with the empowered buyer? Well, stand by for the answer to that question while my dear colleague and friend, CJ Force, who is an aficionado of Jurassic Park, was going to answer that as we get deeper in the presentation. We have a lot of material to cover. We doubt we'll have time for question and answer. We're going to handle this in a relaxed manner, so please type in your questions and we're all done. One of the three of us will respond to you personally to answer any question that you submit to us. The thing I'd like to note is that we have compiled this report from 25 different resources, and from Gartner and Forrester and McKinsey. We've been out to Serious Decisions, and our goal is to confirm the findings that we're all seeing, to coalesce them together to help you confirm your knowledge, expand upon your knowledge, and learn from what we're seeing across the industry. We've done our homework, so you don't have to. You're going to meet CJ Force, who we talked about very soon, my colleague, a management supervisor, and Scott Levine, our VP of Strategy. These are both B2B experts, and they're going to be carrying the bulk of today's presentation with you. Just a little bit of note further about Kern. We have been around the block many times in the B2B area. We have had years and years of experience working with world-class organizations. So part of the value that we bring into this presentation is not only what everyone else is saying, but the direct insights and feedback we're hearing from the boardroom of some of the best practitioners in the industry. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Scott, who will talk about the two main areas of our topics today.
Great. So hi, everybody. This is Scott Levine. What we're going to cover today is the state of B2B marketing and the state of B2B customers. And we're going to talk about 6 challenges facing the B2B CMO. So as we all know, the world then and the world now are very, very different places, just as it was just a few years ago, and even more many years ago. Whereas the buyer used to be the receiver of the fact, now there are a billion journalists. Everyone who has a mobile device is a potential journalist. We went from a TV-centric media to a mobile first. Actually, it's just mobile. Everyone's on a mobile device, and everyone is using mobile at all times. We went from being a captive audience to having the ability to switch on and off as we please, and we went from fixed parameters to time and space shifting, where we can determine what we'd like to see in the time and space we'd like to see it. And then from physically limited access, whereas we only had access to certain types of media at certain times, we have unlimited digital access in an instant to all different types of media and to information. And we were forced to opt out by either turning off our TV or putting down our magazine or turning our newspaper over. And now we need to choose to opt in as we are the empowered customer. We look at this as a what's in it for me reality, or the me economy reality. And we live in a mobile-first, cloud-first world, but the true power is in making it intuitive and human. We have addressable audiences that are fluid. So when we talk about addressable audiences, we're not talking specifically about what we can talk to as an audience. We talk about the roles that people have in life and how those people move in and out of those roles. So the roles that you can talk to me, and I'm a marketing executive, I'm a dad, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I move in and out of these roles as my day goes by, and you can address me in each one of these different roles. The tyranny of choice. There are more choices, there are brands that people have now. We look at this as an unbounded rationality of decision making, whereas it used to be a very bounded rationality. You only had a certain amount of fixed parameters to speak within. And then brands need people more than people need brands. Really, why should I buy what you're selling? And then linear integration is yesterday's reality. It's no longer a linear journey. People pop in and out on whatever device that they're on. You may be in a taxi on your mobile device. You get to the gate. You're on a tablet. You get to your seat in the plane, and you take out your laptop. So you're switching between devices, you're switching between channels, and you're popping in and out as your life dictates. So because of all this change in the buyer, we looked at the empowered B2B buyer today, and we thought we'd give them a voice. And to do that, we created what we call the modern B2B buyers empowered buyers manifesto. So very briefly, we have taken power. We will no longer sit back and be sold to. We have access to more information than ever with the mere touch of a finger, and we intend to use it. We have a ravenous appetite for content, not marketing material. And we don't stand alone. We are constantly influenced by our network, and we make our decisions in groups. Our strength is in numbers. Because of us, marketing will never be the same. And that's a good thing. We work, we think, we buy on our own terms. We will create the future to our liking. We will be unshakably loyal to what works for us and ruthlessly fickle to what doesn't. We are the empowered buyer. Welcome to our world. So buyers are controlling the sales cycle. Gartner predicts that by the year 2020, 85% of the buyer's journey will be complete before buyers reaches out to sales. Buyers are downloading 14 to 17 pieces of content before they even talk to a sales rep. And what impact is this having on B2B marketers? Again, we went from a world where it was mass communications to today where it's very precise, programmatic communications. We went from a very complex world of understanding our buyer to a very simple world where hopefully we have a single view of the customer with all the technology and analytics that we're collecting. We went from an episodic piece of communication where it was just piece by piece, and now it's very continuous. It's an always-on environment for B2B marketers. We went from being manually driven to really technology and automation driven. And we went from one way really to more than two way. It's like million-way different kind of communications where we're interacting and having conversations with our buyers. And we went from a very, very slow way of communicating to an extremely fast, almost in an instant communication. So at this point, I'd like to turn this over to CJ Forrest, who's going to tell you about the top B2B CMO challenges.
Cool. Thanks, Scott. And to answer that question at the top of the hour that Russell posed of why the heck are we using Jurassic Park, well, I have to be honest, one of the first reasons is because I'm just a huge geek, and that's what Russell meant by aficionado. But actually, there's a couple other reasons. One, it's fun and timely because Jurassic World is just crushing it right now in the box office. But we're going to talk a little bit about the power of stories, so we might as well use a little bit of that and practice what we preach. Plus, in B2B marketing, I'm sure you guys sometimes feel like you have a bunch of hungry dinosaurs that you need to feed, the dinosaurs being your sales team and the feed being some leads, right? So we're going to cover 6 main challenges of the CMO, and these are the 6 buckets that we were able to break up everything that we've heard, everything that we know that are most timely and relevant in today's B2B marketing space. So just a quick rundown of those, just so you don't turn the channel. Marketing in groups and how to do it effectively and efficiently as possible. We want to teach you how to use the power of brand to break through to the more sophisticated group buyers that we're going to tell you about, and we'll show you some tools and tricks on how to do that. We want to show you how important it is to create a strategy to develop remarkable content that caters to the group buyers and how they act as a group, and we'll show you some templatized visual process that you can help do that and keep your content on track for maybe even a year or more, and some modern media strategies. We'll show you how you might need to think differently about your entire media strategy in light of these empowered B2B buyers and owning the entire customer relationship and which parts of that relationship CMOs are focusing on to achieve the greatest sustainable results for their organizations. And we want to show you how important it is to build an entire demand generation ecosystem. So we'll show you what a best-in-class B2B marketing organization looks like. So don't turn that dial. So the first thing, buying in groups. Buying in groups is the new norm. TechTarget puts the average group size at 2 to 4 people, and that number is even growing, and we'll get into that in a little bit. In fact, 84% of all companies buy in groups or say that they buy in groups now, and 91% of large companies over 500 employees say that they're buying in groups. The point here being, if you are not arming each buyer in the group with the information and emotional certainty that they need to feel comfortable making a decision, your organization is going to struggle to grow. So who are these people that make up the group? Here's where the element of Jurassic Park comes in, and I love this. So just coincidentally, Serious Decisions maps out the 5 B2B personas or stakeholders in a B2B decision are your champion, your CXO, your influencer, your user, and your ratifier. And nicely, this kind of breaks up into the cast of Jurassic Park. So if you have trouble remembering them, think back to circa 1993 and remember the main characters in the movie. You have your champion or your compelling protagonist. That's Dr. Grant, the guy that wears the fedora or whatever hat. He's the main character throughout the thing. He's the one that you're most accustomed to talking to. And just to back up a little bit, if you think back to the movie, the whole premise of it is you have Hammond, John Hammond, who's the older fella in the movie. He's been asked to bring a group of stakeholders to the park to convince them in order to secure his next round of funding. So he has to cater his messaging and the experience to these 5 different stakeholders. So that's his challenge, much like the B2B marketer in the group buying scenario. So moving on, you have your CXO, which is Dr. Ian Malcolm. He's a big thinker, a visionary. He's focused on the big impact on his company and the world, and he's focused on the ROI. You have Dr. Sadler. She's the woman botanist in the movie. She's the influencer. She's the trusted character that everybody turns to for advice. She's concerned with performance and efficiency. And then you have the attorney in the movie, who we'll come back to in a little bit. He's the ratifier, the bean counter, if you will. Sorry to the attorneys out there. But he's the one that's focused on, are there alternatives? Can we do it cheaper? What's the total cost of ownership? And then not depicted in the background here are the kids. If you remember the 2 children in the movie, those are the users. And so that's the group that's actually going to be visiting the park. And when it comes to B2B, those are the ones that are going to be using your product, service, or technology. And they're going to be focused on one thing. Will it help me do my job better? And will it help me achieve my goals? So just to keep that in mind. One thing to note is because group-based buying is kind of a new thing and a hot term this year, we don't want to have that confused with account-based marketing. So group buying is actually a subset of that. Account-based marketing being you're going after a single named account to get a greater share of their wallet or to win net new accounts. And group-based is just within that subset. Who are you speaking to within those accounts? Just not to belabor the point, but that needs to be said. Then you might ask, well, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to market to these groups? Well, because they act kind of counterintuitively. And this is part of the reason why CMOs and B2B marketing organizations are struggling. The graph here shows that as you increase the size of the buying team, the likelihood to purchase decreases. Now, there's a couple interesting points. You can see the psychology of group dynamics start to kick in right at when you go to a group from 1 to 2. Drops about a third of the way, from 81% of likelihood to 55% of purchase. And then another interesting point here, you see the 5 people in the buying group, which Serious Decisions says there's always 5. Well, once you get beyond that, you plummet again. And that's probably a symptom of inefficiencies of decision-making process within organizations. But either way, you're floating about 55% likelihood once you get to a group buying decision. So why? Why is that happening? Well, the corporate executive board measured 2 reasons for this. And they asked people across different decision-making groups within B2B or within organizations purchasing business products or services, what's the reason behind this? And there's 2 that kind of came to the surface. And the one is, as group size increases, the perceived risk of losing respect and credibility among your peers increases. It's the social pressure. And the perceived risk of losing your job increases as the organization or the group buying size increases. These are both proportional. So the subtext of that is, and the reason why this becomes so difficult to get to conversion or decision within B2B decision or buyers groups is you have fear, resistance, disparate perspectives of about 5 people, 2 to 4 according to TechTarget. Those are all, it's multiplied by that number of people, all pulling against a group consensus. we like to say, think about the last time that your family tried to decide on where to go out to dinner. Now multiply the stakes because it's a business decision. It becomes really difficult. So how do you do that? How do you market to these groups? The rest of the presentation, we're going to try to cater to that. So one way is to use the power of brand. So according to McKinsey and Marketing Pros, 56% of businesses express difficulty building their brand, B2B businesses. So the point here is you're not alone. It's difficult. Here's why it's important. We already said that by 2020, B2B consumers are going to get through up to 85% of the buyer's journey on their own. And so when they're getting through that majority of the buyer's journey on their own, then your brand and your marketing has more work than ever to do. So this chart says when the process begins, over on the left, 0%. As they go to the right, they engage with sales or your company, 57% to up to 85% in 2020. What McKinsey has cited, on average, the conflict in the group begins at about 37% through that cycle, well within the jurisdiction of marketing. So that begs the point. You need to focus on your branding because it's going to be your constant voice throughout that process. McKinsey agrees, and Marketing Pros, brands drive customer decisions, drive to the bottom line, drive differentiation, act as a purchase factor, and add tangible value. So here's that element of story. How do you go about doing this? Your brand has to tell a story across your content. So we are hardwired as humans to think about what's putting our status quo in jeopardy. So we will not take action unless our status quo has been threatened. And here's an example of that from the movie. This goes back all the way to near the evolution of man and Neanderthal. So you have homeostasis. Life is good. I'm just hanging out. Here's that attorney character from the movie Jurassic Park. He's in the car. A compelling event happens. His status quo is threatened. A new situation, a new insight, a shift in the pattern. So now he's highly aware. He's alert, and an emotional state kicks in. The point being here is if you do research in psychology and figure out and determine how the human mind works, the element of decision is made in the same area of the brain that is tied to emotion. It's not rational. And so when that heightened state of awareness comes and the dinosaur, the T-Rex in this case, comes to light, he is heightened awareness and he quickly runs out of the car, evaluates his options, and considers what he's going to do. He finally makes a decision to run to the restroom and hide in the bathroom. That becomes his new status quo post-purchase. And if you've seen the movie, I think we all know how that works out for that guy. Moving on, if I can. So another element of story to help you remember how to create content and marketing and brands that evoke emotion to drive action is an example used by Dan and Chip Heath in the book Switch. Sorry. Drive is also another good book. Check that out if you can. But Switch is great. So this is Switch is all about getting people to move to action and getting them to make a decision. And so they use this analogy of, think about somebody riding an elephant. And if you're standing on the ground and you shout up to the person on top of the elephant, you say, "Hey, I want you to turn right." And the person on the top of the elephant's like, "Yeah, I want to turn right. That sounds like a really good decision. I don't want to go over to the left because there's danger over there." Well, that's the rational part of the brain. The rider is the rational part of the brain that might agree with you. But the problem is that rider can't turn right unless the elephant wants to turn right. And the elephant represents the emotional side of your brain. And why this analogy is so good is because this really depicts the balance between those two areas of the brain. Rational is the part of your brain that wants to get up at 6 in the morning and go to the gym. Emotional is the big elephant in the room that wants to sleep more. And so you have, as the marketer, you have to pull the levers to get the elephant to move. And in the analogy in the book Switch, they say it's the marketer's job to pave the path for the elephant and entice the elephant to go in the direction that you want to. The logical brain will agree with you, but you have to pull the emotional triggers. How do you do that? Well, we often refer to kind of this ecosystem of brands, and you start with the why. Why does your company do what it does? What do you stand for? What's your brand promise? Then we go and we talk about how do we do that. Maybe we show you how you do that. Then finally, we only talk about what we do, our products and services, at the end. And so a lot of B2B marketers have this reverse. We go out with a strong message of what we do, buy our product, versus not spending the time to build the affinity towards the brand and to accelerate your company into the consideration set because you've built up trust and people know, like, and trust your company. So how does that look from a more usable standpoint for you guys listening? We'll often use a brand house. So you on the left, or brand architecture, on the left you have those three circles now just mapped out vertically. On the top is your why, your philosophy, and your promise. As you move down, it's your role. What role do you play in fulfilling that promise? And how are you going to show that to people? And then at the very bottom, it's the what. What action do you want people to take? So here's an example that we put together from FedEx. If you go and look at what FedEx is doing, they're doing a great job here. Their why is we connect people and possibilities. It doesn't say anything about shipping, anything like that. As they go down, now they start to kind of allude to shipping, but they say we deliver solutions that matter to you and your business, turning global challenges into opportunities. A little bit more specific, but still, it's very broad about what they do. They continue down to the proof point, and how they prove it is not through touting their products, but just customer stories, social responsibility stories. That's where there was a challenge out there in the world, and FedEx helped solve it, and then some remarkable case studies. And then finally, they get to what they do, and again, you'll notice that the way that they bucket their products and services still isn't just a tried and true, or just a here's what it is, shipping, free shipping or whatever. What we want you to do is we want you to save on shipping, we want you to grow your business, we want you to learn from other businesses, and we want you to consult with a FedEx expert if you need it. Those are the things that if you go on their website right now, are what they are quote unquote selling. So moving on to creating a content strategy to create remarkable content on a regular basis. Let's talk about it. What's wrong with content marketing? Here's what we're seeing. 86% of B2B marketing organizations are using content marketing. Seems like a fair number, but here's the weird thing. Only 38% of them rate their content as effective, or their marketing content as effective. What is going on there? Why are we continuing to make this investment if it doesn't work? Well, so this tells us there is belief in it, and there are some bright spots out there. That's actually a reference from Switch, if you go and read it. What are they doing? What are the best-in-class content marketers out there doing? Well, one, they have a documented strategy. Not just a verbal strategy, not a meeting on what we're going to do. It is a documented strategy. 60% of those who have a documented strategy rate their content marketing as highly effective. Compare that 32% who have a verbal commitment of what they're going to do strategically when it comes to content marketing. They publish frequently. The best-in-class content marketers are the ones that are publishing on a daily basis, and the ones that, at the minimum, publish multiple times per week. Now, it's impossible to do this unless you have a documented strategy. So that's why this is listed first here. Then they spend money to make this money. 37% of them, they're allocating up to 37% on average of their total marketing budget to content marketing. Compare that to 16% for the least effective companies. And they're using the top channel here is SEM, as well as social posts, social ads. Those were the ones that were ranked most effective at getting the words out. And what's interesting, when you plot these things, and we connected the dots, this is a cycle. You document your strategy, so you have a roadmap for up to a year, maybe even greater than that. So you publish frequently, there's no surprises, and you spend money to get the eyeballs on it. So how do you do that? How do you start documenting your strategy? It starts with the buyer's journey. This is Kern's 10-step buyer's journey. It starts with that status quo, which we already covered, is that homeostasis state. What pieces of content are you going to create to attack status quo and and allow people to understand that where they are in status quo is no longer safe or habitable. So those are things like viral type videos, infographics, edutainment as a bucket term for things that are also entertaining as well as educational. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are the 10 stages: status quo, recognize need, social research, search for solutions, seek for vendors, evaluate solutions, justify solutions, cost analysis, purchase, and evaluate the decision after the journey. So you might be thinking, okay, we have these buckets. How do I map my content? I see the channels there. Well, here's what you have to do. What we do is we take that 10-stage buyer's journey and we map our content, or the content that we plan to create, against that journey. But there's another element here, and that's disposition. What are the people thinking, feeling, experiencing, their expectation and their consideration at that point in the journey? Those things have to be factored in. A lot of the times they can be catered to with one piece of content, but very often as well, you might need a separate piece of content to do the job at the different buyer cycle. So this one happens to, this buyer's map could be for your champion, because you might be thinking, great, but my different group buyers think differently, so they would need different content, right? Well, you actually are correct. You do need a different map for each of the buyers. So because the CXO is interested in things much different than the user and much different than, let's say, the influencer or the ratifier. But here's that's a lot of content, right? That's a lot of content maps. Here's what that looks like mapped out to that buyer's journey. And here's the areas where the different group buyers are interested in. So your champion is interested across the journey, every one of the 10 stages. That's the audience that you're most likely familiar with marketing to. And then the other players in the group come in at different times. A CXO, for instance, is interested right at the initial stages of loosening that status quo, and then at the end, or justifying the solutions. So when you map out your content strategy, you're creating different maps for each one, and here's what they look like. CXO, here's where the CXO is interested, so you're creating content that you're making sure that you create content that aligns to these stages. Here's what it looks like for the influencer, making sure that you're checking all the boxes here to have content that caters to these portions of the buyer's journey for the influencer. The user, the ratifier at the end, and the champion across the entire journey. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Russell. He's going to talk through an example of a company that's best in class using these principles.
Yeah, thanks, CJ. And I want to share some work for SAP, and I want to make it clear what I'm about to share was not produced by Kern. It was collected on the public web, but we are privileged to work with SAP in various areas, and they are a world-class marketer. And what I found great about this example is in their launch of a new product called HANA, a HANA platform, how well they were able to set the new brand or their new brand promise, which is around Run Simple, and then taking that brand architecture and brand theme and providing the experience for someone to purchase their product through the entire journey. So I just want to run through this really quickly. They have a global deployment under their new Run Simple campaign. This is an example of a print ad. They have outdoor, they have digital, all very clear, compelling, intriguing, really well done brand positioning and strategy work. And then as part of the product, when you go to the SAP HANA website, what's important to note is look at the navigation that they've designed into the website. What you have is what is HANA and establishing the substance of it all, how it gets deployed, what are the use cases, what's going on in the community, and how do you try it. And that's extremely related to exactly the purchase process about how anybody might want to shop. Notice how well they brought their thematic into it and the clarity of the Run Simple promise that they do. This is one of the landing pages. Of course, now they have the founder talking about the platform as a future and re-merchandising his expertises and speeches that he gave to conferences. Now you look at the deployment tab. Here's how they talk about
that fits the platform and fits your business. And of course, I was on the page and I got chat. If I wanted to engage with them, an excellent way to capture someone who's a visitor. Here are use cases, and I do a wonderful job of providing use cases by industry, and they go after every single industry. And so now if I'm a little deeper in my buyer's journey and I can find out who's doing and what's happening, that's going on. And SAP really understands the power of community, what we call social research, what you saw in stage 3 of our buyer's journey. Not only do they have their community of bloggers within the organization, but their own user community. They spend a lot of time developing their social presence. So I encourage you to check that out. And as part of the community tab, one of the things they're doing as an interesting asset is podcasts. And I think if you look down, there might be 10 or 12 podcasts, a really sort of what I'll call old new again, but listening and hearing what's happening, because we trust our peers more than we trust the marketers, and SAP is capitalizing on these trends of their empowered buyers. And of course, they make it easy for you to try on. It's very clear. Try it, get started now, and I have to really commend them on how well they have done this job of telling their story, aligned to the buyer's journey, providing the content assets to move them through, and allowing the shopper to shop at any piece of the journey wherever and whenever possible. And with that, I'm going to turn it over back to CJ, who's going to talk about media.
Thanks. So when we talk about media strategies or modern media strategies, we're not going to go into extreme detail. This is, after all, a CMO presentation, but we're going to show you the biggest challenge that CMOs are facing. And this is based on not only research, but buzz on the street. For instance, Serious Decision conversations with many marketers, and the kind of the thematic across that, or the hidden thematic across that event at Serious Decision Summit. So if we move on here, if I can click the slide. Here are the ecosystems that some of the most successful B2B marketers are using. And they're thinking about their marketing in 3 buckets, or their media in 3 buckets: paid, owned, earned. And so paid is very traditional. We're all familiar with that. It could be display banners, it could be broadcast TV, things like that. Earned media is the buzz that you generate on the other side of the spectrum. Earned media is the buzz that you generate because you're doing something interesting, right? And at the center of this, owned media. Here is the challenge that B2B organizations are facing. Owned media, whether it lives on your website or your YouTube channel or any of your other social channels, it has to be remarkable. And that is the big challenge that B2B marketers are facing. They're struggling to create remarkable content and experiences for your customers, and then this cycle breaks down.
And CJ, I want to jump in. The word remarkable, I think, is really important, because it's remarketable, meaning I'm going to forward it, and it's remarkable in the fact that it gains people's attention. And that level of creativity is exceptionally difficult to achieve. It's difficult for Hollywood, it's difficult for marketers, but it is the new requirement of marketing today. So I don't want to just pass over that word too quickly, because it's so critical to make this cycle work.
Yeah, I really think about it like focusing on that word. You think about what it means. It's do I look at something and do I feel compelled to talk about it? That's pretty much the lens that you have to look through. And because we have a little bit of time, I can share, what I heard personally at Serious Decision Summit was talking to all these different marketers is, okay, we've kind of got a sense of marketing automation, and we're going well there. We have a sense of the buyer's journey. We're moving along there. But now that we've kind of brought our head out of the water of drowning of those two things, we're realizing that, we have to create marketing that is actually compelling and emotional and good, and also the word good marketing, right? We're all familiar with it because we're all consumers of B2C products, and when we see great B2C marketing, that's the feeling that we as B2B marketers should be going after. We can still, B2B does not stand for boring to boring, and so this is where this ecosystem of media breaks down for B2B marketers, because we don't have anything remarkable. So as we move on, we can show a couple companies that do this well. And there's two ends of the spectrum that you can play in with creating a remarkable piece of owned content. One is, we mentioned it in the buyer's journey, edutainment, but you could just go pure entertainment. And so Caterpillar did this, and they did this really well, and you might have seen this because this video went pretty viral, is they showed their brand promise of having the job, or having the technology that is built for the job, and they showed it in a really fun way. And this was a giant game of Jenga, and they did a series of videos like this, and it's just purely fun to watch. And this thing spread like wildfire. And so they had 2.6 million views on YouTube, and as of November last year, they estimated over 650 million impressions, just based on a very remarkable piece of content or owned media. The next end of the spectrum is you could go very utility driven. And so IBM just crushes it with this. And they do it off of credibility, but really, because they're IBM, they're credible, of course. But if you get one of their, for instance, this CMO trends report, from Stretch to Strengthen, one of the first pages that they say, this study is based on face-to-face conversations with more than 1,700 chief marketing officers. That is kind of a holy cow moment. That is a piece of epic content, as they might say in the blogosphere, and it's a piece of remarkable content for sure. And so these are two examples of owned media that B2B marketers will have to strive to create. Because the point being, and the realization at Serious Decisions of definitely all the people that I spoke to, was the time for garbage content is over, because these empowered buyers, they can smell it a mile away. Marketing materials don't work anymore. So as we get deeper into the media and the media planning, what channels are you going to play in? You have to realize that buyer's journey, or on this side, this is a simplified version of it in the B2B space. It starts with awareness, you go into demand generation, and then down to lead gen. These all have nuances in them that need to be accounted for when you're planning the media. And on the right side shows the channels that align to those different stages. The important thing to note here is that when you're creating your media plan, you need to be disciplined in the approach of how you judge performance in these other channels. That is the challenge that we see time and time again of clients or organizations doing native advertisement or display advertisement and judging it as a lead gen channel. It's going to fail every time if you judge purely that channel as a lead gen channel. What you really need to do is judge the whole ecosystem accordingly. So awareness channels like display, TV, or even out of home, they're going to influence the bottom of the funnel, lead gen funnel, and everything becomes easier. The analogy that we like to use is branding and awareness becomes the oil in the demand gen and lead gen engine, because it makes everything down the funnel easier when people know, like, and trust your brand. So with that, Russell, I think I'm kicking back to you here.
Okay. So let's talk about the fifth challenge area, which is owning the entire customer relationship. And over the 30 years of being a B2B marketer, I have to say that it was really rare that the B2B marketer would talk about what happens post-lead gen, post-conversion. That was someone else's responsibility. It was taken care of by product, by the training teams, but why would it be the responsibility of the CMO? I mean, it's there, but it never was like such a huge issue as it is now. But it is a big deal, and it's a big deal because of the behaviors of the empowered buyer. And if you just look at it from this perspective, so McKinsey produced what was the new buyer's journey loop, that it wasn't a funnel anymore, that it's a closed loop process, very much like consumer purchasing, from I have a need to research all the way through to RFP to purchase. And then within that, there is a sub-loop, a secondary loop, of which the current customer is then reevaluating and rebuying. Now, what you notice here, and why we have the broken line, is that if a customer becomes onboarded, does not receive the right training, does not get usage and full value out of the product, is not getting the service necessary, it doesn't take them very long to be writing negative reviews, negative press, negative PR, negative blog posts, which of course go right up and dramatically impact what is happening in the buyer's journey, which is where do I start? My social research among my peers. And so if I'm not loving my customer, if I'm not properly setting the tone to create positive sentiment, what I end up doing is hurting the critical aspects necessary to bring the next new customer into the funnel. And so no longer can we really separate acquisition and customer relationship and customer retention. They have to be tied together. And that's borne out by the fact that Forrester and Ernst & Young are seeing that 90% of CMOs are focused on customer relationship as part of their strategic vision, and they want to be perfecting the customer experience and building credibility for long-term relationships. Everybody understands how critical this is. And of course, underneath this aspect is, well, what are the nuances and what are the areas that we as marketers need to focus on within the loyalty subcomponents? And here are all the little steps that are required, which is to get to advocacy, I've got to engage you, I've got to grow you, I've got to train you, I've got to cross-sell you, I've got to love you, I've got to reward you, I've got to somehow help you become an evangelist. And if I don't do something right among all these customer management steps and customer management areas, that arrow that's going to the loop, of course, really means is negative sentiment, negative social research, and hurting and creating barriers for us and for potential new buyers that are coming into the system. All right, let's go to the next one. So what does it mean? Again, it means that the path to purchase and the path to passion are interconnected for us as B2B marketers. And that when we think about our messaging and our insights and our branding and our targeting strategies, and then how we're dealing with nurturing and technology to make that happen, to create personal experiences, and then how we get them to the point that we've helped sales to support to conversion, that the other side of the house, the team that's onboarding and creating usage and doing training and driving to satisfaction is equally important these days. They're one and the same. And that in the end, we need to bring value and value optimization for the investment, because advocacy immediately impacts next purchase behavior. And this is the new challenge for CMOs of how do I build an entirely integrated team that breaks apart the siloed thinking of the past and deals with our new buyer. Not an easy challenge, but this is the mission. So let's close on the last aspect of it all. And I do see a lot of notes coming up here. The presentation will be available for all attendees, and I appreciate the positive feedback, and we'll take as many questions where you have some good time. So if you have questions, start typing them in the question box. We'll answer them as I come to closure here. The last and big challenge is building a demand generation ecosystem. And I had the privilege of being in a world-class organization, a technology organization that is running through tens of millions of data records and built their technology to have the highest levels of demand generation ecosystems and a demand center, which was a topic of note just a few years ago. And I'm going to tell you why this is so important. So on the next slide, and CJ, thanks for advancing them. What we need to be moving from is this episodic view of campaign. First of all, we need to understand what a campaign is. And a campaign is not the white paper campaign. That is not a campaign. A campaign is what you saw when I showed you the SAP example of they're introducing a new product. It's under the brand umbrella, and it is a holistic, integrated, multi-content, multifaceted, multi-touch point, audience program that is always running, and then it is fueled by investment strategies along a period of time. And to make that happen is you need a platform. You need your technology, your content strategy, your automation to always be in place so that you keep building instead of having this up and down and up and down and up and down. Why? Because the buyer is always shopping. If you go back to that manifesto, whether we like it or not, if they're unhappy, they're going to look at a moment's notice. If there's 5 potential buyers, that's 5 potential opportunities for them to be in 10 different places on the journey. We have to be there all the time to help capitalize on their purchase behavior because we are in control of absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I got a quote and I got approval. So it was from Lynn Anderson. She's the chief of staff to the marketing of HP. And I was sitting with her in a meeting. She says, Russell, CRM isn't dead. Marketers don't control anything. And boy, she really knew what she was talking about. So let's close on this last point, which is it is complicated. And I know we showed you that we've gone from complex to simple. Well, on one hand, it's simple. We want to get a simple, holistic view. The truth is what we're doing is incredibly complicated. It requires incredible levels of creativity, things that we have never seen before or asked our agency partners to think about before or ourselves. There are 8 pillars. And we don't have time to go through all these 8 pillars, but again, we'll send you this, that need to be integrated to create a demand generation ecosystem. Your technology, your nurturing, your scoring, your sales enablement, your measurement systems, your testing reporting, all need to be done together. Not easy, but there is a vision and there is a way to make it happen. So let's close on this point. Again, you're welcome to questions. The challenges that marketers face today, CMOs face, is the following. The empowered buyer does not buy alone. I know, Ronald, you say you do. I don't know whether I really agree with you, but I will say the following. Groups are the norm. We see it out there. Your brand is crucial. Everyone knows the importance of the brand, but the art is how do we tell our storyline? What is our thread of our brand across the buyer's journey? And how do we take that storyline and create remarkable, forward-thinking content that engages the individual both on the emotional and logical level? And then what are the new strategies and new media, whether it be from programmatic buying to in the news feed, and of course through search, that allows my content to be seen and shared and passed on? And this is an interesting point, which is PR and PR strategy needs to be embedded deeply with demand generation strategy. It can't really be separated. And then how are we owning the whole relationship? Because if we goof the onboarding and hurt our customers, we make it twice as difficult to win the next customer. And then how do we bring all these pieces together in a world-class system? So I thank you so much for the feedback. I thank you for your time. Let's go to questions. If you just go to the thank you slide, CJ, and advance us here. I have a question that's coming in. My question is how to map the customer's journey. What questions or process do you set to help me create my own customer journey mapping? Well, we happen to have a journey mapping expert sitting right next to me. So Scott, good. Let's give Ricardo an answer.
Yeah, sure, Ricardo. Well, you need to start with the 10 stages of the journey, from the homeostasis stage to the recognizing that you're having a need and all the other stages, and then create what you think is the need or want state for each one of those stages, and then through research, talk to your sales staff, talk to your people that are actually on the front line selling. What are these people thinking? What are they experiencing? What kind of objections are you having to overcome? What's the big hurdles that need to be overcome to do it? And then you'll understand a little bit more about what that customer is going through in each stage of the journey. And then, once you've mapped it, then you can create content that's relevantly compelling to that customer at each stage of their journey.
I think just to piggyback on that too, Scott, one of the things as part of that process is audit what you already have. And so oftentimes we'll see marketers have a tremendous amount of content that is evergreen and can still be used. And then to keep in mind that one piece of content does not have to do all of the work. So one piece of content doesn't have to loosen your status quo as well as give you the pricing tables to evaluate total cost of ownership, all these things. That's another mistake that we often see is trying to cram too much messaging into one piece of content.
Okay. I don't see any more questions. I thank you all. If you would like to contact us, you have the phone, you have the agency web. My personal email is russell, RUSSELL @kernagency.com. You're more than welcome to write us. We will write you back. We will spend the time. We love educating. We love B2B marketing. And we thank you so much for gifting us this hour with us today. Have a great day, and thank you so much.